It's like the perfect looking person. That's good. That's your compliments. Thank you, darling. Thank you. Hi, Mom.
Good luck to
Look
you.
at Mom over there. Thank you very much. Thank you, darling.
The media often presents Donald Trump as a heartless, self-centered man who profits at the expense of the common people. This is what many Americans also think when they talk about or think about the real estate mogul and former president. Do you have this same thought? Well, the truth is that the former president is not as bad as people make him to be. He also has a heart of gold and has helped several people at different times.
A little relief as we are covering all this serious news. You see a Marine alongside Marine.
Join us as we reveal 10 random acts of kindness performed by Donald Trump that will make you cry. There was a time when a young Marine named Andrew Tamaresi went from California to Mexico. He had no idea that that one action would change the rest of his life. Within his truck, he had legally owned guns, which is okay in the United States but not allowed in Mexico. He was arrested and put in jail when the Mexican government found the guns. He soon became trapped in a nightmare from which he couldn't escape. Andrew was locked up in a strange country for 7 long months, beaten and left alone, with little chance of soon going back to his family. Being through that was so scary that it broke him physically and mentally. Andrew came back to the U.S. with deep scars and no clear plan for how to fix them when he was finally freed. But that's when Donald Trump did something that not many people thought he would do. Without warning, Andrew got a check for $25,000 in the mail from Trump, along with a note that just said, "To get you started." No big news was given, and there was no press meeting. It was a small act of kindness done at a great time for Andrew. It wasn't the money that meant anything to this Marine. It was the fact that someone cared. This next act of kindness by Donald Trump is so random but heartwarming. A city bus driver in Buffalo, New York, called Darnell Barton, was going on his normal route on a cool October day when he saw something strange on the bridge ahead. A young woman stood outside the fence, incredibly close to the edge, and looked down at the drop below. Darnell was different from other drivers who might have kept going, hoping that someone else would stop and help. He stopped his bus, got off, and walked over to her. He was cool, even though the situation was serious. He spoke to her softly and reminded her that she wasn't by herself. She slowly climbed back up over the railing and off of that ledge. Darnell stayed with her until help came. When Trump heard about this, he saw Darnell's quiet bravery for what it was. A man who wouldn't look the other way saved a life. After seeing how brave the driver was, Trump sent him a check for $10,000 as a special thank you for his kindness and bravery. There was no hope of getting anything in return. Before he left, Trump told Darnell that what he did was important, and that the world was a better place because he stepped in and changed things that day. Most people wouldn't notice the small act, but for Darnell, it was a moment that proved kindness does work both ways. A boy named Andrew, who was 3 years old at the time, was fighting for his life because he had a rare, unidentified illness that made it hard for him to breathe. Andrew needed care that could only be given by specialists from all over the country. The family had to act quickly, but they ran into a heartbreaking problem. No commercial plane would fly the child because he needed so much life support equipment to stay alive during the trip. So that he could get help, Andrew's dad called Donald Trump and asked if his private jet might be the answer. Trump didn't think twice. He agreed right away to let them use his plane. Andrew took off on Trump's private jet with his parents and a group of nurses. They made it safely to New York, where doctors were waiting for them. This act of kindness wasn't done to get attention or fame. It was done to help a little boy stay alive. The grandparents of Andrew were so thankful when they met them at the airport. They knew that their grandson's path to hope was only possible because someone cared enough to say yes. Jennifer Hudson's life changed for good in October 2008. In a terrible act of violence, she lost her mother, her brother, and her young nephew. Jennifer felt so sad that she went back to Chicago to find a safe place to cry in peace, away from the media and the public eye. When Donald Trump heard about the incident, he offered her and her surviving family a free stay at his Trump International Hotel and Tower in Chicago. He wasn't trying to get attention. He just wanted to give her a safe, comfortable place to start healing. She was taken to a place where she could grieve without having to think about reporters, bills, or anything else. During one of the worst times in Jennifer's life, Trump made sure she and her family had everything they needed to stay safe and get through it. He gave her a private place to stay, a safe place where she could be Jennifer, not the star or the famous, but a daughter and sister dealing with unimaginable loss. Because of this kind of act, she didn't have to carry the world's weight on her shoulders. This gave her time and room to get strong for the hard journey ahead. Donald Trump made history with this next act of kindness. In the early 1980s, Donald Trump did something that no one in the male-dominated world of building skyscrapers thought he would. He hired Barbara Rez and put her in charge of building Trump Tower. She was the first woman to be in charge of a project like this. Trump didn't look at her gender. He saw her skills and trusted her to run one of his boldest projects in a field that didn't often hire women, especially to lead such a big project. Think about how hard it must have been for Barbara to go into building sites where most of the workers had never been told what to do by a woman before. But Trump's faith in her helped her move forward. He stuck to his choice, which showed that he was ready to break down walls to get the best person for the job. Trump made sure she had everything she needed to do well, and the two of them built a symbol that would change the view of New York forever. This choice was important because women still had a hard time getting equal rights. She did more than just build a building. Trump gave her the chance to help other women get jobs in construction. There was no need for a big show. It was about believing in someone's skills, no matter what other people think. A small act of kindness can sometimes pay off in ways that no one could have imagined. A couple was driving along the road one night when they saw a limousine that had broken down. It didn't matter that they didn't know who owned it. When they pulled over, the husband offered to help right away and help start the car again. They didn't know it, but they helped Donald Trump. Because they were so kind, Trump chose to thank them in a way that will never be forgotten. A letter showed up at the couple's house a few days after that night. The deed to their house was inside, and it was paid off in full. The weight of debt was gone in an instant, and they were filled with pure joy and relief as they owned their home outright. You can only imagine how shocked and thankful they must have been. Even though Trump didn't know them, he wanted to thank them for being kind and generous. Not because of who they were, but because of a real reaction to an act of human kindness. Today, simple acts of kindness are often overlooked. This act showed us that sometimes our good works have bigger effects than we could have imagined. A story about Donald Trump that not many people know shows how kind he is. A single dad was having a hard time because he had to work, raise his kids by himself, and worry about his own dad's health every day. His dad had cancer and was having a hard time. The single dad did everything he could to help him. But no matter how hard he tried, life was overwhelming. This is especially true when medical bills keep coming in and there is only one source of income. Trump met this man one day and listened to his story. He didn't just nod his head, he could feel the dad's worry and pain. Trump looked past the dad's appearance and knew what a big load he was carrying. He wanted to help. Very few people would have reached out to that man, but he did. He told his team to send $10,000 to the man. It was more than just money. It was a way to escape the stress and worries that never seemed to stop. That check meant more to this dad than words can say. The act of kindness was more important than the amount of money. Trump's action took away a huge load, letting the man breathe a little easier and focus on what was most important: his family and his dad's health. This act of kindness stays with you, not just because it was kind, but also because it reminds you that sometimes someone can understand what you're going through and care enough to do something about it. This next act of kindness is one for the history books and proof that Trump values justice. Giving boxing great Jack Johnson a long overdue pardon was an amazing act of justice that went back more than 100 years. Donald Trump did it out of the goodness of his heart. Jack was more than just a boxer. He was the first African-American heavyweight winner and broke the racist rules of his time. What was his crime? Because of who he was and who he loved, he was harshly sentenced for loving a white woman, even though it shouldn't have made a difference. It was more than just a show for Trump to pardon Jack Johnson. It was a message to fix a wrong etched in the sands of time. Jack had to deal with harsh criticism and endless court cases because he lived his life in public. His success in the ring was an example, but his problems off the ring showed how unfair society can be. Trump restored some honor to Johnson's reputation with this pardon, a way to say, this shouldn't have happened. The people who had fought for Jack's name felt relieved and healed when Trump made the pardon. Johnson's family, supporters, and actor Sylvester Stallone were present as well. Recognizing a man who had been dead for a long time and whose spirit had been hurt but never broken was a strong moment. Trump's pardon was an emotional tribute to a man who never gave up. It was a way for Jack's family and friends to show that they would never forget his life, struggles, and legacy. Melissa Young, a woman, stood up to talk at one of Donald Trump's campaign rallies. Her voice was full of thanks and emotion, and she caught everyone's attention. Melissa, who used to be Miss Wisconsin, had been sick with a disease that could not be cured. It was hard on her body and her mind. She told her story and said that Trump stepped in when she felt like her life was falling apart and gave her words of support and real help that changed the future of her family. Trump met Melissa at one of his events and was moved by how kind and strong she was. But even though her health was getting worse, she reached out because she didn't know what the future held for her and her young son Jack. Trump not only told her she would get better, he also said Jack would be safe in the future. He kept his promise and helped Jack in a way that made sure he could go to college someday. This was a gift that lifted Melissa's heart as she dealt with her fears about her sickness. Not only Trump but also everyone else who watched will never forget Melissa's emotional thank you at that gathering. She said that Trump's kindness had made her feel better because she knew that if anything happened to her, her son would be taken care of. For Melissa, this wasn't just money. It was a lifesaver and a promise that her son would be taken care of. This act of kindness will live on in Jack's life as he grows up, giving him hope and chances. Annabelle Hill was going through a terrible time in her life in 1986. She was almost going to lose the farm that her family had been taking care of for generations. Even more painful was the fact that her husband had killed himself not long before, leaving a mountain of debt that not even his life insurance could pay. As Annabelle's life went downhill, the sadness only grew as the sale date got closer. That's when she would have to say goodbye to her family's history. Trump, a rich businessman from New York, saw her story on the news at that time. You wouldn't have thought he'd think about a farm in a small town. But something about her battle moved him. He made it his goal to save that farm by getting in touch with people in the area. He talked to the bank hard and was able to get them to delay the sale, which gave Annabelle and her family a fighting chance. People all over came together to help the Hills raise the money they needed to pay off their debts when his name was attached to the cause. They did it in the end. They spent Christmas together that year in Trump Tower, where Annabelle and Donald burned the mortgage papers as a ritual. Many years later, Betsy, Annabelle's daughter, went on stage to thank him again. She told him how much his kindness meant to her family, and that they prayed for him every night. He wasn't just an investor for the Hills. He was their only hope when they were about to lose everything. It was a moment that they will always remember and be thankful for. Do you think Trump is a kind man? Which of these acts of kindness moved you the most? Kindly share your answers, thoughts, and opinions in the comment section. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to this channel to enjoy more videos like this. Also, click the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.